Hi, Emily. Great to have you on our Friday afternoon live stream. I'm absolutely fascinated about the project you've undertaken this year. But before we get into that, Emily, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to this point, please?
I sure can. So I'm Emily Webb. I live in Melbourne. I am a former journalist. I lived in the UK for a long time. I am also a podcaster. So for the past 4 years, have co-hosted a podcast called Australian True Crime, which has been great. And I've written a few true crime books, have a real interest in true crime, obviously. And I also work, my day job is in communications in local government. So yeah, I'm pretty busy, and I'm also studying my Certificate 3 in investigation. So that's keeping me very busy, and it's really fun through the Australian Security Academy.
Fantastic. So the project you've taken on this year is a podcast. What can you tell us about it? What was the inspiration and how did it come about?
Yeah, sure. So this year, obviously in Melbourne, we've had a lot of working from home and staying from home. And so I do the Australian True Crime podcast already, but my co-host, Michelle Laurie, we were just throwing around some ideas about different stuff we could do. And I had, for a while, just wanted to do a podcast talking to crime and thriller fiction authors, because when I'm not reading true crime, I'm reading crime fiction. So that's just how I roll. And she said, hey, just go do it. And so really from about September through till really now, I've just been recording interviews with authors just at home on my equipment. And it's been so enjoyable. It was a real kind of savior for me during our experience in Melbourne. And yeah, it's been great. So I just chose authors that I liked, some recommendations, and yeah, podcast launched 2 weeks ago, because we launched with 2 episodes in 1 week. And yeah, it's fantastic. So it's called Crime Fiction Friday, and I'm having a lot of fun with it and supporting authors, which I really love to do.
Welcome to the program, Friday the 18th of December 2020, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And that was Emily Webb, who is the convener of Crime Fiction Friday. We'll be back with Emily very soon with the second part of that interview. Emily is an author. She's a podcaster. She is a communications officer, and she is a bibliophile. There's a word for you to look up this week to extend your vocabulary, and it's a nice word too. So Emily will be back very soon. How are you this week, Pat?
I'm very good, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. Well, the big news this week is this happened this week. Craig MachLachlan was found not guilty on a range of charges stemming from 4 alleged inappropriate conducts in his workplace. And so that came out in court in Victoria this week. In relation to that matter, Pat, those sorts of matters, Pat, what are some of the issues?
Look, when it comes down to sexual crimes, quite often it comes down to the credibility of the witnesses. Now, investigators are gatherers of facts. We present facts before the court, and the court decides on guilt or innocence. Now, in normal circumstances where you've just got a standard crime, you try and prove each fact or each element of the offence in as many ways as you can. And you've usually got quite a lot of corroborating information on technology and all sorts of things like that. When it comes down to reasonable doubt, we've got a fairly complex system in that it leans towards it's better to have someone guilty not convicted than someone who's not guilty convicted. So that's the way that it works. Now, with sexual offences and rapes and indecent assaults and things like that, quite often it comes down to one word against another. And credibility in the witness box, that's the key issue. It is a really big issue.
In this case, the magistrate did make comments about Craig MachLachlan's credibility in the witness box over the way he presented himself a couple of times. Now, in her summing up, the magistrate said that she was not happy with the defence solicitor QC Stuart Littlemore's cross-examination, how he cross-examined the complainants in a closed court last year by questions about their sexual reputations, poses in photographs on social media and what they wore. In her written judgment, the magistrate, Mrs. Wallington, found Littlemore's questioning of one woman became offensive when the lawyer said the woman was in a photograph sticking your breasts out while near a man in underwear. The cross-examination hit a nadir when, having given evidence that the accused commented on her breasts, she was asked whether she was pleased with the figure the magistrate wrote. So the magistrate was not happy. A nadir is the rock bottom. That's the lowest point you can go to in an argument or a fight or a disagreement, whatever. So,
unfortunately, that's the case. Like the defence solicitors, they just take the gloves off and they try any means available. Open source intelligence now, social media, Facebook, all of those sorts of things now, they will drag those out and they will bring them before the court to attack that credibility.
My word. And here's Stuart Littlemore, the QC that defended Craig MachLachlan. He was asked by Andrew Denton if he could defend someone who you yourself believe not to be innocent. Littlemore's response was, well, they're the best cases. In fact, he went on to say in that interview, I mean, you really feel you've done something when you get the guilty off. Anyone can get an innocent person off. I mean, they shouldn't be on trial, but the guilty, that's the challenge. Now, that's Stuart Littlemore QC. Now, when you go into one of these cases, especially the sexual harassment one, we've got 3 or 4 different complainants. The investigators are going to go back through the open source intelligence, look at the Facebook posts, look at, depending on how big and how serious the matter is, it could be very expensive. So I'll give you an example of that. I hope I can give you an example of that. No, I can't at the moment, but there was a $5.2 million case for bullying just on the 2nd of November this year in Australia. So some of these things can have unlimited outcomes. So they will investigate, your background. They'll go and speak to your ex-boyfriends, your ex-girlfriends, your ex-partners, your ex-whatever. They'll speak to the people you went to school with. If it's expensive enough, they will do that just to find out if you are the good lily white person you're claiming to be. So QCs, they take the gloves off, like Pat said, and they're defending their client. So Stuart Littlemore, he did his job. I mean, they get paid a lot of money to do that sort of thing. Stuart has been around forever. He is a Melbourne Scotch College graduate. He's written books. He's actually written books and an author, just like Emily Webb. He wrote a series of books about Harry Curry, a barrister in New South Wales. They were fictional books based on his experiences. And he used to be the host of Media Watch on the ABC. And that's going back a bit. So Stuart used to do that on the ABC. It was sort of on late at night, and I'll flash.
Sunday Sport, fully imported from the Street of Shame, starts its 2nd edition with a falsified photograph of the Duchess of York and goes downhill from there. Who needs it? Good night. We'll see you next week.
That's Stuart Littlemore on Media Watch. Now, we used to watch Media Watch with Stuart, and he'd get on Media Watch for his 5 minutes on the ABC at night, and he'd go, oh my God, did you see that spelling mistake on page 3 of the London Times? This is back in 1980s. And then he'd go on to, what about that grammatical error on page 16 of the New York Post? Yes, Stuart, we really loved that sort of stuff, mate. We lived for it. It was a great program. I was chortling so much one day when he was talking about a double entendre in the Financial Review's crossword at 6 down that I nearly snotted my cognac onto my cigar. So Stuart's been a personality in Australia for quite a long time now. And as a QC, he's been around, and those gloves have come off in any case. You saw his actual quote from that Andrew Denton interview that's got nothing to do with his Craig MachLachlan one, but basically that's how QCs think when they're defending clients, because they're going to defend them. That's what they're paid to do. That's what they do. Now, big news this week. The RSPCA and New South Wales Police have busted a cockfighting ring in New South Wales. And there have been numerous arrests, and it's led to issues over visas in one case and drugs in another case. And there's a whole lot of things. It's been a lot of cash confiscated. All the roosters involved in it, they've had to be put down because they're bred to be fighting birds. So that's happened in New South Wales this week. Well done to the RSPCA in New South Wales for closing that down. One of the really interesting things to come out of this week is at IBAC down in Melbourne. Now, if you want to get into government investigation and you really want your finger on the pulse of how to do it and what to do, you don't get in Facebook groups where they bitch and moan and crap on about how bad everybody else is and how good they are, like those surveillance hate groups you see on Facebook. You get in groups that are going to direct you to the right area. Now, I'm directing you now to the right area. Now, IBAC are not on social networking in any way, shape or form. But what I'm saying to you is if you're going to be an investigator, you want to crack government investigation or a contract for supplying investigations to government, you've got to go where your customers go. Now, your customers go to IBAC for guidance and for direction and stuff like that in relation to fraud and corruption and that sort of thing. So IBAC put on a program this week where they had a webinar, and it's on their website and you can go there and see it. Now, you would have died of boredom in it most of the way through, but here's a quick look at it.
Q&A session a little later to learn a little bit more about what the agency's perspectives are and give you the opportunity, of course, to ask us some key questions.
Suspicion of corrupt conduct. A year ago, looking at fraud and corruption or vulnerabilities in local governments, and we self-assessed ourselves against the recommendations. We review the regional agency responses.
Eildon, Dartmouth, Hume, so some of the most significant dams in Victoria. We've got about 20,000 active customers. The majority of those are in the irrigation community, but I also Goulburn Water was going through a transformation at the time, and which
Now, it goes through all the issues that the local councils and state government departments have in Victoria and how they've addressed those issues and some success stories. And all the presenters there were from councils or from the ombudsman or stuff like that. And they were talking about things such as the organisational values and how they're value focused and stuff like that. Now, if you start watching these programs that IBAC put on, and it's on their website, you can go there and see it. You just have to give them your email address. They're not going to spam you. It's IBAC, right? And you watch that sort of thing, you have got the clue to cracking a whole bunch of people who are potential clients for your investigative services business or where you're going to work when you have your certificate for. Now, in that video, they give away what their biggest problem is. They have a little survey halfway through it, and they ask every council on that what their biggest issue with fraud and corruption is. And you can see it there. And you can tailor your approach to local government and state government as a supplier of investigative services to hit them right between the eyes as a solution for what keeps them awake at night. I'm not going to tell you what it is here. Go and watch the video, right? Because that's too hard for a lot of people to do. So all my students will do that because they know we direct them to good videos. So that's something that keep an eye out for that with IBAC. Now, this is really important, and it's following on from Craig MachLachlan.
So let's stay together.
Tell us all about it, Pat.
This is a really good movie, actually. It's, even though it was produced in 1957, it's a really good movie about what happens in a courtroom. Over the years, I've heard many detectives say, you know, no matter how painstaking you are in regards to providing the best evidence before the court and presenting the best evidence and the best facts before court, I've often heard a lot of detectives say, who knows what goes on in the jury room. What this is all about is they adjourn to the jury room, and Henry Fonda is the one person who puts his hand up in the preliminary vote to say, not guilty because I don't know. And they talk about it, and what they do, instead of just listening to the argument that was presented in the court, both by the prosecution and the defence, Henry Fonda instigates a bit more of a deeper look, and they analyse the arguments and they drill down on it. It's actually a very good movie.
And that movie is called 12 Angry Men. Google it. You'll find it on YouTube for free. So certainly, as an investigator, it's a really good insight. Look, this movie has no romance in it. There's a lady doesn't even appear in it. It's like Rambo. And look, no one gets shot in it. And they spend, except for 4 minutes, the whole of the movie inside one room. And it's riveting. You just have to watch it. So it's about potential racism, and it's not about racism. It's really a very well done movie made for a budget of $337,000 in 1957. It's relevant to our work as an investigator right now in 2021. Thanks for that, Pat. Let's go to Emily, part 2. How many hours goes into making each one of those podcasts, Emily?
Oh, wow. So the chats actually get edited. So I've got an amazing editor called Martine, and she has worked in commercial radio for years. So she is just amazing at just listening and editing. You know, a lot of the chats I'm having, it's like chatting with a friend. We're just talking about a lot of stuff, and you just have to edit it down. But what I really love about talking to people is I ask some similar questions about writing process and about what inspired them, and also the books that really were influential for them. And I note that today was the news that John le Carré died, the great thriller espionage author. Yeah, he was 89 and he died in England. But a lot of authors I've spoken to, in particular Aoife Clifford, who is episode 2, she said that The Spy That Came In From the Cold by John le Carré was like a massively influential book for her. So yeah, it's just interesting to hear what authors people really get inspired by. And then we talk about other things come up. So, you know, in episode 3, Noelle Holton, who's an author living in Britain, she was a probation officer and she turned to crime writing. And, you know, there's another author coming up who lives in Queensland, and her ebooks have sold in the millions of copies. And she actually took up writing when she was older because she needed a way to deal with pain management. She has fibromyalgia, which is a condition. So she said that she did that to cope with pain. So everyone's got a really interesting story about why they do what they do.
Yeah, well, I did note that S.R. White said when I was doing my research for this program that he was networking with another writer and who wrote the Vera series, the TV detective series. And it was interesting just to see how that started and how that came about, sort of being a little bit opposite to what was intended. So it really is interesting and fascinating. I think all of us somewhere along the line have got 2 or 3 books inside us just itching to get out. And I think, Emily, what you've done is you've created a platform that promotes those people that do actually go through with that. And I'm going to be watching it with great interest. I noticed your other crime program had 8 million downloads there at one stage, so I'm sure it's had a lot more since.
Yeah, we've done pretty well. Australian True Crime podcast has been going for, we're going into our 5th year, and we've done like about 180 episodes, and it's been amazing. Like, we speak to retired police, we've spoken to, you know, a lot of the time we spoke to people affected by crime, and we talk about the ripple effect of crime, which is big. We speak to first responders who have PTSD, and interestingly, we get a lot of feedback from people who work in, you know, ambulance, the law, police, lots, and they talk to us about the impact that it has on them. We've spoken to people who've done time in jail. We just kind of run the gamut, and also talk to, you know, journalists and police who've investigated particular cases, and people, there's some cases that listeners really do like to hear about, and it can get controversial, but yeah, they've definitely got a taste for it. We have a lot of truck drivers who contact us, who listen to us, which is really fun. Yeah, so I love it. It sort of keeps me engaged with my journalism background, and I still work in communications, just albeit in a different way. But I just feel like there's such interesting stuff in everything that I do. I'm just that kind of person. I need to sort of have a diverse kind of workload to keep me going.
My word. Well, it's very interesting work. Emily, thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to seeing, don't go away, I need to speak to you in a minute, but thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again in 2021. This is a great initiative that you've got, and I'm really looking forward to more episodes. Thanks for coming, Emily.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure having you, Emily, and people, I cannot recommend enough Emily's new initiative. Now, this is about fiction crime scene writing. She has another program about real crime. And Pat, you've watched some of those. You've listened to some of those podcasts. They're pretty good, aren't they, mate?
Oh, I listened to a lot of them, actually. It was refreshing when I learnt that she's enrolled with their course. But, yeah, I've listened to them for quite a long time, probably 2 or 3 years. So, yeah.
No,
it's got a lot of the old detectives that, you know, played significant roles in the homicide squad and places like that over the years, and I just find them very interesting. So, yeah.
Fantastic, mate. Now, people, if you want to get yourself your own private investigator coffee mug, all you've got to do is pick up your mobile phone and ask me a question. So record yourself asking me a question. So say, hi, Mike, my name's George. I've got a question. What's the difference between Certificate 3 in Investigative Services and Certificate 4 in Government Investigation? And I will play that video that you send to me to my mobile phone number, which you can just Google on the Australian Security Academy website, or it's on these live streams. And if I play that, and I will play that video with an answer your question. If the question's really hard, I'll get Pat to answer it. If it's an easy question, I'll answer it, because that way I look really smart. But you'll get a free private investigator coffee mug, or you get a surveillance investigator coffee mug. Now, what could be better than that? These things are valued at around about $40 each. They cost a fortune, so that's with post. So please, look, get out your mobile phone, ask me a question, keep it down to about 30 seconds, send that video, and I will play it here on this live stream and answer your question. And if it's a really hard question, really, really difficult question, like what is the meaning of life, I'll get Pat to answer that one, okay? So get yourself a free coffee mug. Look, I've got 20 of these. That's it. There's no more after that. And I've got, I think, 15 of these. So, hey, you want a coffee mug that says a lot about you? You're a private investigator. It's got the official Australian Security Academy logo on it. Good. It's there for the taking. Just send me a video of your question. Now, other news this week. Spouse busters have got the attention of Current Affair. Now, Current Affair have gone into a bat for a lady who reckons that they've gone and done unauthorised surveillance to the value of $5,500 on her husband, who she separated from. He has a medical condition, and she's saying that they're going to repossess her elderly parents' car for unauthorised surveillance.
Busters company director.
I've got a camera right there.
Sutcliffe appeared on our show more than a decade ago, revealing the art of catching cheaters.
This is a favourite by some of our female operatives. It's obviously a handbag camera.
But this was before Sutcliffe was convicted for impersonating an AFP officer. His security licence was torn up, but he continues to be a director of Spouse Busters. Did Mr. Sutcliffe tell you to...
Now, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, a whole bunch of investigators have gone nuts about this, because really it tars them with the same brush. So they're getting peer association, but they don't want to know about cheating partners, and they've gone crazy on it on LinkedIn. Now, I don't care what they do, that's up to them, but they're screaming for the fact that, it should be shut down, should have a licence taken on, who cares, whatever they're saying. But here's the regulator. Now, CAPI's regulatory approach currently in New South Wales is completely stonewall. You go to them with a complaint about an investigator, as you can see up the top on the left-hand side, it's like Monopoly, you're going to get out of jail free. They're not going to do anything about it. Nothing. Now, why are they not going to do anything about whatever you want to complain about, a security guard or an investigator? Here it is, straight from the horse's mouth. Person in charge said to me, we're focusing our limited resources in the area of highest public safety risk and won't broaden our regulatory capture until satisfied we can do so effectively without compromising what we've achieved and are still working towards in the Class 1 training space. So they're saying oh, we haven't got funding, we haven't got the staff, we can't do anything about it. And that's got nothing to do with Brett Sutcliffe, that answer that I got there. That's about an issue with something else in risk management. But they're saying, we're not going to do anything. You can do anything you like. So doesn't matter who you are. You can be, an ex-private investigator. You want to rip people off. The regulator in New South Wales, this is who they are. They're not going to do a thing about it. I reckon you've probably got 2 years to get away with that before they do anything about it. So that's sad. It really is a disgrace. If it was in Victoria, they'd be kicking down your door at 3 a.m. in the morning from the Licensing Regulation Division, and you'd be facing an inquiry with them. But in New South Wales, no funding, they're not interested. iCare, you can rip iCare off as much as you like if you're a government person there. And this is the issue. So Cappy, they're not going to do anything about any complaints about anyone. So don't rely on that if you're in one of those LinkedIn groups and you're talking about that. It's just not going to happen. Now, I'm coming to one of the all-time favourite parts of our program that everybody's interested in. Here we go.
Just gotta let it go.
I often sit and wish that I could just change my past. To think about you, Dad, there's so much shit that I could ask. Like, why am I still haunted by the day that you left?
So, a couple of weeks ago on this very program, this man who Pat and I had breakfast with at the AIPI in Melbourne in January this year advertised a position at Stopline. He's an Australian Security Academy graduate student. This man got the position. He's an Australian Security graduate student. Big deal. What's so good about that? Well, 15 years ago, when they wanted to formalise their qualifications in their industry, they did it with the Australian Security Academy, and that's paid off for both of them 15 years later. So it doesn't happen instantly, right? It doesn't hurt. It just builds and builds and builds, and that's one that's really worked out for those two. So well done, Peter. Well done, Andrew. Great work there. Now, loss adjuster position on the Gold Coast at Crawford and Company, all the floods up here on the Gold Coast recently, they're going to be screaming for loss adjusters. Don't have to be a qualified one. If you can do an investigation, they'll employ you. They'll put you through a training program. So Crawford and Company, the biggest loss adjusting firm in the world, they have a position on the Gold Coast, and I don't doubt they would have positions all around Australia. Crawford and Company, Google them if you're looking for investigation work. Employees, you'll want to employment relations investigation specialist. So they're after that. Back again, this one is in Brisbane for the NDIS. So this is one of those contract positions. You're just going to be in sort of like a call centre, dealing with complaints and stuff like that about people ripping the NDIS off. That's a bit like being in a Centrelink call centre. But if you're a phone-orientated investigator, it's a job, it's a position. They're paying $45 an hour, I think. So if you don't want to get out in the field, great opportunity. You might even have work from home opportunities with that. I don't know. I haven't been that far into it. AIG down in Melbourne, they're after a fraud investigator. So that's Suncorp Metway. So that's certainly a really worthwhile job. That'll be in general insurance. In New South Wales, in harness racing, oh boy, you'll never have a dull moment in your life if you're investigating what goes on in there. Great job. So that's available. There's a regulatory reform officer down in Victoria. Now, this is with the Department of Jobs Precincts and Region, and no one will be going through more regulatory reform than Victoria in the next 24 months. So great job to be involved and lead that. And IGIS want an Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. Now, you're going to see that was Assistant Director position, and it's on my job page's website. And people say to me, well, why are you advertising Assistant Director positions and, lawyers' positions and loss adjusters' positions? Well, I can't help that the people that go to that website are lawyers, are loss adjusters, are, high up level people. They look for jobs too. So that Positions Vacant website is for everybody. It's not just for beginners and emergers, but there are beginning and emerging jobs advertised in there. They're not just directors' jobs or assistant directors' jobs. They're to cover a wide range of experience and not discriminate. So that's really important. We've got to give everybody the opportunity to see those job vacancies. And also you can see how you're going to grow into those job vacancies in the future. So it's something to aspire to as well as just see what's available now. So on that Facebook page, if you join that, I put up jobs frequently on it. Every couple of days, I put up the jobs on there. I curate them. I leave them up so you can do your research from jobs from 3 years ago and suit your application to what they want. Now, I told you, I gave you a little clue earlier on in this program about what they're looking for today. They're looking for values, and they're trying to acknowledge value in government departments, local government and state government today. It's the buzzword, stick values in your application, okay? And they're trying to do culture pulse checks to see that the culture and the values line up in these organisations. That's what they're saying. So if that's what they're saying, you know, in HR on the website for IBAC, in the state of Victoria for local and state government, that's what you want to be saying in your application. So watch that IBAC video, get on their website and see it. Now, just quickly, I'll go into this one. Investigation Industry Association sounds like a whole bunch of old people doing old people stuff. Okay, so it's not in Melbourne, but it was an Investigation Industry Association. The Australian Insurance Law Association have introduced in Queensland their mentor program for 2021. Now, you can get on the AILA website and look at it. And they're going to, if you're a young person in insurance, investigations and compliance, they're going to assist you to grow into that role, and they're going to give you some mentoring if you win and you apply. So get on the AILA website, join their association, download the PDF application and see if you can be one of the people that scores one of those mentorships. So working very hard at the AILA. There's not much going on at the moment in industry association. It's the end of the year. We will expect a lot more come late January, but you know, AILA, they're out there, they're offering that mentorship, and good on them. They're growing, emerging compliance people and insurance people. They work very hard at the AILA. Now, I've covered all our job vacancies. I believe there's a beauty. This is a really good job vacancy, people. It's a WorkSafe Tasmania Inspector. So they've got two down there. You can jump on the WorkSafe Tasmanian Inspection website, or you can go to my Facebook page and you'll see that job vacancy. So that is a really great jobs vacancy. There's a lot of inspectors required in Tasmania at the moment. It's growing. It's attracting industry. So really great job. I think they're paying around about 85,000 plus for that job as an inspector at WorkSafe in Tassie. They do have an internal training program that goes along with that. So people, that's our program for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Pat, thanks for coming in, mate, and explaining those couple of things for us.
Pleasure. Have a good weekend.
You getting out and about this weekend, mate?
Yes. Now the rain stopped, so yeah.
Very good. Yes, it's been a very wet week here in Queensland. People, thanks very much for watching. We're going out with our all units return to the base in the same usual way. We'll see you again next week.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That was episode 39 of Australian Investigation Weekly News. We'll be back next week with another program. That really like to thank Emily Webb for dropping by today and telling us about her new initiative. She's going to come back in the new year in 2021 and tell us about her other program that she does. We'll see you again next week. That's Mike and Pat. See you then. Bye.
Bye.